be recorded. Turn your video off. Amazing. Well, now officially, welcome to the organizing meeting to discuss how HGSU can organize around social justice issues, both on our campus and in our community. Also, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat with your name and department. Feel free to include your G year and perhaps which committees you're interested in so we can sort of get to know one another in that way. Those of us who will be presenting about the various committees who are engaged in this work will introduce ourselves as we go throughout the meeting and tell you all about the work we've done to this point and give sort of a brief little history of the various committees that have been around almost since the beginning of our union organizing more broadly, and then some of the work that's now being solidified as committee work. So I'm Belle, a G6 in History and Middle Eastern Studies. And I've been on staff with the union for a couple of years, no longer, but I've been involved with the International Scholars Working Group, Civil and Human Rights Committee, and the Solidarity Committee, which I'll speak a little bit about later. But it's just so exciting to see so many new faces who are, interested in doing this work, because honestly, one of the most important things that we can do as a union is support and contribute to social justice issues on campus and in our communities. So also, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, the agenda is posted in the chat if you would like to follow along a little bit there. But we will start off with Ege and Lisa just sharing some more introductory remarks.
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Ege. I'm going into my 4th year in philosophy. I served on the bargaining committee, negotiating the contract that governs us now. But the way I got involved with HGSU was through committee work. I had been a peer counselor for a rape hotline when I was an undergrad, and when I came to campus as a graduate student, I didn't really know what to do, and I sort of caught the labor bug and started seeing how social justice and labor issues were intertwined and how we can build so much more power if we think about workers are not just as people who are making money in the workplace or trying to be a part of the economy, but a whole worker who has a life, who is inflicted by systemic issues, who has power, not just to change their own working conditions, but also change the world around them. So that was a big part of how we conceived ourselves as organizers in the past few generations of organizers, and that shaped how we decided to form these committees and how we run them. What happens in these committees is that they're completely worker-led spaces. So these group names are sort of arbitrary. They have several histories, but what they do is workers who are motivated come together, decide on a campaign to run, and they run it. They're very much places of duocracy. Somebody who does it, and it gets done to the extent that they do it, and they shape our entire union and how we relate to our campus. So it's a very exciting opportunity to be involved in this space. It's a completely worker-led democratic effort, and that's why I kept being a committee member throughout my time organizing for HGSU. I'll pass it off to Lisa, who's a staffer on our campaign, who can talk a little bit about how she relates to committees too.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar trajectory as Ege. I'm Lisa, I use she, her pronouns. I'm on staff. I organize primarily with scientists in the Division of Medical Sciences. And I also got involved because, in the year of all the Me Too news, the union was one of the forces on campus that presented the most compelling argument for how we can protect graduate students and student workers and the safest, and like keep our community safe. You know, for those of you know, there's like ongoing issues in the anthropology department. There are major issues in the government and econ departments. I was a public policy PhD, so I was kind of closer to some of this. Obviously, these issues exist in the sciences and other departments as well. So really, you know, for those of you who are completely new to the union and Harvard, you know, we're a labor union. We're not affiliated with Harvard. We are an organization of the workers and the students on campus. And that gives us a lot of power and like a huge voice and resources in fighting for social change at Harvard and beyond. So that would be like my pitch for like why social justice organizing is so powerful in the context of a labor union. And also I think to sort of echo a little bit what Ege was saying, you know, like the sort of traditional notion of unions is like we focus on like money and benefits, and obviously we do. That's very important to people, and like it's also very intertwined with racial justice and distributive justice in general. But like unions are also a powerful force for any kind of social change and, you know, workplace protection that you know, we want to see. So that how I got involved. That is why I ended up joining staff. And so I see it really as a very key part of, you know, growing this union overall as a staff organizer. So I'm still involved with a number of the committees, the Feminist Working Group, the Civil and Human Rights Committee, which includes our Racial Justice Working Group. And I think, I guess like my perspective as someone who's been on staff is just that it's completely integral to our union's mission overall of creating like a safer workplace for everyone. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you both. Eric, did you want to add anything to the introductory remarks briefly?
Oh, just to I think reiterate the point that Lisa made about the oh, I should introduce myself. I'm Eric. I'm a fifth year in the History of Science department. Also former staff organizer with our union, and I used to head up a committee focused on mental health that has gone on indefinite hiatus, largely because we actually accomplished a lot of the goals that we set for ourselves when we formed that committee in the first place. Obviously, there's still a huge mental health crisis on our campus, but taking some time to sort of regroup after we got expanded healthcare coverage and some other things in the contract that we had been fighting for. I mean, so related to what Lisa was saying about the sort of difference between union organizing and other kinds of organizing, when I came to grad school after spending years when I was an undergrad working in other kinds of activist organizations with a sort of more institutional affiliation with university administrators, and I had gotten really frustrated at finding not just resistance from administrators, but I think most frustrating was actually leaving, graduating, and seeing a lot of what I felt we had accomplished sort of dissipate as soon as the people who were driving it had left. And that's one of the reasons why I've been so thrilled to be involved with HGSU here, because what we have here really is a kind of autonomous site of power, and we change and evolve and transform too. I've been here for a while now, and HGSU has changed a lot as an organization just over the time that I've been here, but there's still a continuity of purpose and mission that I think is really exciting, and I think is actually kind of unparalleled in academia, because we do have that sort of independent institutional structure.
Amazing. Thank you, Eric. So our numbers have grown since our little brief introduction. So I will just say once more, we are recording these introductory remarks and the explanation of what each of the various committees has done up to this point. So if you don't want to be seen in that, please turn off your video. But now we turn to the second part of our discussion, just telling you a little bit about how these committees have come about, what work they've done up to this point. And then after that, we will go into breakout rooms and talk about what we want these committees to look like moving forward and what we want to do this year. So first off, Brandon will tell us a little bit more about the Civil and Human Rights Committee. Take it away, Brandon.
Thanks, Belle. Hey everyone, I'm Brandon Mancia. I'm a G4 in the history department. I am on staff. For the past, I would say like 6 months, I've been helping coordinate alongside Lisa and some other folks, the Civil and Human Rights Committee, and adjacent to that, or within that, the Racial Justice Working Group. A lot of the work that we focus on at a more like conceptual level is how to center the work of racial justice, anti-racist politics more explicitly within the academic labor movement, and therefore to shape the labor movement as a whole, of which the academic labor movement is probably one of the most exciting movements right now within it, right? So that work has meant, like some of you have already mentioned in the opening remarks, starting to think how to work within the university for certain goals and how to work outside of the university for other goals, more radical demands, to be able to push and affiliate with other activist groups. And that work, I think, has been proven by sort of our solidarity engagement with primarily other activist groups on campus, the Harvard Prison Divestment folks, that campaign, Act on a Dream, which works on organizing for the rights of the undocumented, and other other groups, other labor unions, of which a lot of the workers are undocumented as well. So centering this kind of politics, I think, like opens up a lot of conceptual questions about like the relationship between race and class, or anti-racist politics and labor politics. And I think the way we go about it is to actually start doing the work of trying to make these connections, of trying to take concrete direct action and provide support wherever we can. More recently, I think what's relevant for you to know some examples about the kind of work we've done. We've joined, some of us have joined the recent team called No Cop Unions, which is a national movement of not just graduate student unions, just labor unions in general, of rank and file workers who are doing research into the role of police and police unions within the labor movement, of which that role is quite detrimental. That work is leading to hopefully some policy recommendations later on and other actions that will be taken to address the power of these unions and actually repressing the labor movement more generally. Obviously the continuous murder of Black people in this country and around the world. Another campaign or town hall, at least, that we hosted was to raise the issue of anti-Asian discrimination during the beginning of this pandemic. We organized a town hall in which we talked to a lot of Asian, not just international, but also Asian American student workers about their concerns about living in the United States during this pandemic and what Harvard could do to support them, and where Harvard wouldn't be able to, and where groups like ours, unions, can step forward and provide mutual aid and other forms of support, including political support. One thing to note here is that when I say things like doing research into things like police brutality and police unions, and also anti-Asian discrimination during this pandemic, the UAW as a labor union has political power we are affiliated with the UAW International. So therefore, the actions and decisions taken at the local level can be raised at the international level, and therefore we could put pressure on the international to take certain positions or to fund certain campaigns or certain candidates, or take policy decisions. Obviously, it's a very complicated process, and we can talk more about details later on. But just know that that's what makes us different from other activist groups on campus, is the sense that we're not just talking to administrators. There are other bodies that we're also addressing because we are independent of Harvard's institutional structure, right? And then we also engage in a lot of solidarity work with other committees here, especially the International Scholars Working Group, and they'll talk a little bit more about that. And we can talk more about, ongoing projects and what we want to do going forward starting this year. But I will note that CHRC, of any of these groups, is actually the one where we're actually looking for a lot of new energy right now, because we had a lot of veteran organizers who have since graduated or moved on to other work. And so there's a lot of space right now for you to come in and actually shape the work that you want to see and the organizing you want to see CHRC doing. So it's a great opportunity right now to, if you're a G1, step in and get union organizing right away around issues that you care about, centering racial justice. So that's my pitch right there. Lisa, do you want to add anything before we pass it on?
Yeah, definitely. I really want to emphasize a couple things. Like, for very obvious reasons, like in our union, we prioritize like getting people involved from like many different backgrounds and recruiting people of color in particular, including Black organizers and from like all departments. And that's something, so we are particularly trying to do as we grow this committee this year. I did want to mention a couple other things we've done. Some of you might know this past year, or like in the spring, we were running the series called COVID-19 Night School. It was just people presenting, doing Zoom presentations on their research related to COVID. They're all members of our union. It was like very highly attended by people in Harvard and outside as well. For our last session, I think if you have access to the agenda, you should see this. We organized a special roundtable discussion on race and policing, again, with like union organizers, and it was very interesting. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can watch it. Like really, really brilliant scholars were on the panel. So that's just kind of to give you an idea of like the scope of things we can kind of do as a union. There's really like not, like we can get really creative with how we organize, the kinds of events we put on, the kinds of goals, we really aspire to. It can be as broad as like getting police unions out of the AFL-CIO, or, like doing an educational event for people on campus. So I think I just like want to echo what Brandon said, and like this is kind of like the direction in which we want to take all these committees is really up to the people who join. And obviously we have like some projects that are going on and stuff we've done in the past, but like there's like a lot of room for people to kind of shape the direction.
Definitely. Thank you both. Now we will learn a little bit more about the International Scholars Working Group from Ayush and Francesca.
Thanks so much, Belle. Hi, everyone. My name is Francesca. I'm a G5 in comparative literature. I take she, her, hers. I will just tell you a little bit about the history of the International Scholars Working Group. And then I just will tell you more about what we have been doing basically since COVID started, which has been a really active period for the ISWG, sadly, but also not sadly. Like Belle, who's another veteran of ISWG, I also first got involved with the union through committee work and through this committee specifically. And this was around the time of the Muslim ban, as it was known, so late 2016, early 2017. That was really kind of the, a time when people sort of, when people came together from different sort of different points in their careers. So we have undergraduate student workers and graduate student workers, of course, but the immigration issues and non-citizen issues also affect postdocs. So it's an organization, it's a committee that kind of cuts across different groups of people who might not necessarily, and that's kind of union organizing in general. But I think non-citizen issues are something that, kind of tend to bring people together who might not otherwise be in the same room. What the ISWG did then actually went into the bargaining process and became so important for the situation that we're living in right now. So some of the like key sort of wins, and this was like done sort of via campaigning and sort of via the bargaining process at the same time, and those two things like really speak to each other, and I think ISWG is an example of that. But some of the key wins were to get HIO to provide us with an immigration hotline. So if anyone gets stopped at the border, and if anyone has any sort of immigration emergency, deportation proceedings, racial profiling at airports, like, this is a number that you can call and receive assistance from an immigration attorney. Then we asked them to provide students with a list of immigration lawyers that could help non-citizens in case they needed to go to a hearing or for any other visa issues. We also, and I think this has really been the key win for the pandemic, and it would not have happened without the organizing that was done around the xenophobic attacks on people coming from majority Muslim countries. We obtained sort of this clause in the article about international scholars in our contract that student workers stuck abroad are to be provided with sort of equal employment opportunities. And this has come to be so important in this pandemic because there are a lot of us who've not been able to come back to the United States and still aren't. And we also in the contract, and this was again through bargaining, got paid leave for immigration hearings, and the sort of commitment on the part of Harvard to bring an immigration attorney to campus at least once per semester to talk about visa issues. And yeah, so these we feel are really important wins for non-citizens on campus. And I think there was definitely a period of time during which ISWG was also more dormant. But since the pandemic, we kind of had no choice but to really step up to the plate because of the travel bans, because of the attacks on visa, because of the xenophobic attacks, and the sort of anti-Asian legislation that has been pushed out repeatedly, and the attacks on DACA and the attacks on asylum seekers. And a lot of that advocacy obviously is sort of done in coordination with other committees like the Civil and Human Rights Committees and the Racial Justice Committee, but also at a US-wide level with organizations like the International and Immigrant Student Workers Alliance that a lot of, well, some of these people here have been in touch with. And I don't know, like personally, I've learned a lot from going, I've learned from other organizers. Really, that's been the amazing thing that's happened. And I think a lot of us found out for the first time that our visas are administered by ICE, which is not a thing that a lot of people knew. A lot of people found out for the first time that the J visa program is essentially coming out of the Fulbright program, and that it's, that it's a Cold War program, and and the changing demographics of who international students are, and kind of the different experiences that they come into when they step into the context of the U.S. That's all coming from much wider political kind of dynamics. And so I don't know, I think I'm just gonna leave it to Ayush to talk about specifically what we've done since the pandemic. But we're also very much looking forward to more people getting involved. Like Ege said, like any project, any campaign that we want to get started, we can. And the union is a place where there are a lot of different connections with sort of political power, and more pressure can be put on the issues that we care about and that our members tell us that they're experiencing. I just take it away.
Thanks, Francesca. Excuse me. Hi, everyone. My name is Ayush. I'm a G4 in the Population Health Sciences PhD program. I started off with the union as a departmental organizer and was brought into ISWG, or recruited into ISWG earlier this year by Lisa, actually. And I have been, since maybe May or June or so, coordinating the ISWG with Francesca. Oh, and I take the he series, and I don't know what's up with my throat, just as I'm about to speak. But as Francesca mentioned, we've been doing a lot of things since the pandemic began, and I think we can broadly classify the campaigns that ISWG has been doing into three groups or three categories. One is directly related to the pandemic, and in this we've organized an unemployment town hall with Greater Boston Legal Services, which was open to both citizen and non-citizen students, but it focused specifically on whether or not non-citizen students in Massachusetts would be eligible for the unemployment assistance as well as the pandemic unemployment assistance. Francesca also designed a fantastic stimulus check infographic, which was a flowchart showing whether international students were eligible for the stimulus check. It's posted on HGSU's Twitter as well. You should check it out. Might be relevant for this second stimulus check if it ever comes. And then, of course, the big thing that happened over the summer was the ICE ruling, which came on July 6th. That was a guidance issued by ICE for schools for the fall semester. And it was a disastrous guideline specifically for international students within Harvard, because Harvard had already said by that point that they would be going fully online with their classes for the fall. But ISWG and HGSU more broadly reacted immediately to this terrible, terrible ruling, as did Harvard, but so did ISWG and HGSU, and we organized a rally in Boston that was a part of a series of rallies nationwide against the ICE ruling. Our rally was attended by Maura Healey, who's the Attorney General of Massachusetts. She announced in the rally that she would be suing ICE. We also came together with other UAW branches around the US to organize a Q&A with an immigration lawyer just a few days after the ICE ruling, as a means of trying to understand the implications of the ruling for international students around the US. We collected numerous testimonials from international students, both within the US and outside the US. And in fact, we coordinated with the Harvard administration to provide them with these testimonials, which actually ended up in their lawsuit against ICE. And we managed a number of media inquiries during this time as well. So we put international students who wanted to speak with the media in touch with representatives from the print media, from radio stations, as well as from the TV stations. And we were developing op-eds as well. As this was going on, we were also involved in broader advocacy efforts surrounding international students and scholars at Harvard. And I use the term scholars to sort of encompass international postdocs at Harvard. And ISWG wrote a letter to President Bacow and the provost and the vice provost of international affairs, outlining some of the key challenges that international students and scholars face within Harvard, and also made some proposals about how we can improve the situation for international students and scholars. This was a very influential letter, actually, because we got some very big wins out of this. For example, one of our key demands in that letter was that there are just not enough international student advisors at the Harvard International Office, and we wanted Harvard to hire more international student advisors to help us out, specifically during this extremely critical period as we head into November. And in fact, Harvard did hire an additional advisor for international students. So that was a huge win that came out of the letter. Francesca has already mentioned the fact that our contract includes a provision to bring an immigration lawyer to discuss visa-related issues on campus. And we've been coordinating with HIO to ensure that the lawyer comes in as soon as possible. And we'll also discuss not just H visa issues and green card issues, but also visas related to, or the visas that student workers are on primarily, which is the F visa. At the same time, we've been coordinating with the Harvard International Office to advocate on behalf of international students who are facing visa-related challenges. And unfortunately, generally, it has, in our experience, been the case that students in China have been facing a lot of these visa-related issues, and we've been working quite a lot on that front. And we've also been coordinating with HIO and labor relations to ensure that international students, as well as US citizens who are outside the US during this time, don't face any hiring discrimination, which we have heard of some cases of that. We're also working on finalizing an amendment to our contract, which involves getting reauthorization for remote work every 2 weeks, and that should be done very soon as well. And just to end, I wanted to reiterate what Francesca was saying. We have a number of projects that are in the works, but of course, it's a completely student-driven, student worker-driven committee. So we are very flexible to adopt newer projects as well. And we hope we can talk about these things in the breakout rooms with you all. Thank you. Back to Belle, I think.
Yes. Thank you so much. Now we will turn to Marisa and Eric, who will chat about the Feminist Working Group.
Thanks, Belle. Yeah, just briefly some context on this group, which for a long time was known as the Time's Up Committee, and you may have heard of this committee by that name. So we formed this committee. This was actually one of the first committees that we formed immediately after we won our election, in part because all of the organizing that we had done for the election really, I think, taught us that the issue of sexual violence and of gender-based discrimination was one of the most pressing issues that our membership faced, and an issue that really motivated a lot of people to get involved with our union. So the Time's Up campaign nationally had been launched earlier that year, so we were able to sort of piggyback on that national momentum to start really organizing, centering that issue on our campus. And so eventually we found Marisa, who got involved and has really been driving a lot of our initiatives of late, which you can talk about.
Great, thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. My name is Marisa. I am a G3 in Earth and Planetary Sciences. I've been involved with the Time's Up committee for a few years now. So again, like most people, I got involved with the union through committee work. I got involved my first semester of my G1 year. And I think that one of the most important things about the work that we've done on the formerly known as Time's Up committee, now called the Feminist Working Group, is the fact that one of the central tenets of our organizing is this desire to have a neutral third-party grievance procedure that we can use for cases of identity-based harassment and discrimination. And that's something that was really important to getting us to go on strike last year, to getting folks to get fired up about the union, because this is something that we would really like to have in our next contract, so that survivors just have more options, and so that we can put the needs and rights of survivors first. We also have, throughout our entire time as a committee, been uplifting stories of people on campus who have either reached out to us or that we've reached out to who have experienced harassment and discrimination. One example is the women who were harassed by Jorge Dominguez. I believe it's in the government department, no longer teaching at Harvard, over like, I think it's 30 years, upwards of 20, 30, or 40 women came forward about harassment that they had experienced and at his hands, and we were able to connect with them and help uplift their stories. And we've done that with more people than just them. And we've also assisted folks that have gone through the Title IX process, and through that work, we've come to create these trainings, these advocacy trainings for people who are interested in being a Time's Up advocate, someone that can help people who are going through the Title IX process or the process of grieving harassment or discrimination. And we now are more project-based, and that's sort of how we've always been, that we'll find a project that we're interested in as a group and someone will tend to lead it. For the past 8 months, I've been leading on a project related to Harvard's gift policy committee. Many of you have probably heard about Jeffrey Epstein's ties to campus, and there are more controversial donors at Harvard than just Epstein. And unfortunately, Harvard's gift policy guidelines are not very clear and not very accountable, and there's really no process to complain about donors and their activities to Harvard. So actually pretty soon, myself and some organizers that are affiliated with the Feminist Working Group are going to be meeting with Provost Garber and Vice President of Alumni Affairs, Brian Lee, to be talking to them about our demands and our recommendations for how to create more transparency and accountability in those gift policy, in the gift policy. And that's something that we got to do through the Feminist Working Group. And that's sort of something that we're always doing. We're always fighting for the rights and the voices of survivors to be heard. And we're also always fighting for this neutral third-party grievance procedure that we really hope that we can see in the next contract. Yeah, so get involved with the Feminist Working Group. We always need more people because there's tons of projects, which again is sort of like Francesca said, it's a little sad, but also it's something that is a good gateway into getting into the union.
Wonderful, thank you both. So now I will talk briefly about the Solidarity Committee, and then we will go into our breakout rooms. So in case you missed intros, I'm Belle, a G6 in History and Middle Eastern Studies, and first got involved, as Francesca mentioned, with the International Scholars Working Group in 2017, and have been organizing since I got here in 2015. Oh my God. So the Solidarity Committee is our sort of newest official committee. As it said in the message, we work, or it sort of combines the work that we've done to this point as part of our campus and community outreach efforts. So much of what we've done to this point and what we'll do moving forward is kind of about what each of these committees have been talking about. Like, we're not only supporting our members, but also the greater community. We are all doing coalition work because honestly, that's how we are successful. We combine and we strengthen the resources that already exist and see how we can contribute. So up to this point, the solidarity work has kind of been divided into two, Harvard related.
Hey, what's up?
Oh, hello, I'm going to mute you. There you go. Thank you. And community groups. So In terms of who we engage with at Harvard, like others mentioned, a lot of these student groups who are already doing some of this incredible work surrounding issues of racial justice and what international students are facing. But the Solidarity Committee in particular will also work closely with other campus unions like 32BJ, HUCTW, and Local 26. We work together, we see what issues those unions are facing. We see how we can support one another in our shared struggles. As I'm sure you saw on the picket lines in December, if you were there, we all come out to support one another in these moments. And during the first weeks of COVID, for example, we literally collected masks and gloves from STEM folks to give to custodial staff in 32BJ because the university wasn't doing anything. Off campus, we do a great deal of work with area unions across many industries, as well as other grad unions around the country, something that ISWG specifically has done since the beginning, but a little bit more recently has been building coalitions with other grad unions to, you know, show that we are in this together, and a lot of us are going through similar things, so we share resources, we become stronger together. But as I don't know if many of you know this, but Boston is a fairly major union town, which is really fun. And there are some incredible labor organizations that have been immensely supportive of our work since the beginning, putting pressure on the administration, joining our rallies and our picket lines. So one of the things the Solidarity Committee will do, whoever is loud, please mute yourself. Thank you. I can't find you. Anyways, moving on. So we will continue to work with these area labor organizations. For example, we will officially start working with the Greater Boston Labor Council, a collection of area unions who coordinate on various labor and community issues, and you know, engage more with them and figure out how we can hold Harvard accountable to the greater community together and build our community presence so we can exert more power when the time comes. As it said in the message, we'll also be doing, you know, picket support for area strikes, which we've, you know, done sort of ad hoc in the past, solidarity statements and actions, and coaching other campaigns. Right now we have folks from 2 universities in the Massachusetts area who want to meet with us and get our advice on how to go about forming a grad union. And we'll continue preparing like voter guides for elections that survey candidates on their stances on issues that HGSU members care about. And there's plenty of more where that came from. I could go into detail for so long, but let's move on to chatting about what we want these committees to look like in the future and this year specifically. So we're going to have